Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Work Comp Talk. Oh, you're going to want to stick around for this episode because today, joining me, Bilal Kassem, president of Pacific Workers, the Lawyers for Injured Workers. If you have yet to hear about this podcast, is presented by this amazing law firm that this guy runs. And there's just so many stories, so many things we can dive into when it comes to workers' comp. And if you haven't had the chance to listen to some of the prior episodes, we do highly recommend to do so now. There's a ton of information, particularly for a person that's going through a workers' comp case. My name is Carmen, your host for this podcast, and today it's going to be fire. If you haven't subscribed yet, make sure you do so now and share this content with someone else who could potentially benefit from it as well. Gunshot wounds, denials, and appeals. 8 years in battle of workers' comp. What the F is this all about? That's what we're talking about today. What?
Yeah, so I thought it'd be great to be able to share a particular client's experience in workers' comp because I know a lot of people out there, they're just not familiar with the process and their experience is always unique and oftentimes their first experience going through workers' comp. And so they don't really understand just how bad it can get.
Yeah,
So, this particular client had one hell of a time and is still going through it.
No shit. Gunshot wounds. I mean, come on. It's not every day you go to work and you're like, hey, I'm going to get shot today.
Yeah.
What happened?
No, so, I'll just dive right in here. My client, we'll call him Bob for now because I want to respect his privacy. He was working at a landscape architecture company and he had arrived at work one day and he had gotten in an altercation with a coworker and they actually got into a fist fight and in protecting himself and the coworker had actually had a gun on him and had brought the gun that day specifically to confront my client.
Damn.
And
Premeditated.
Yeah, absolutely. And during the altercation, he pulled out the gun and shot my client multiple times, left him to die.
That's insane.
Yep.
He's probably getting his ass whooped. He couldn't protect himself, the other guy with the gun. So the only way for him to protect himself was using the gun, which is sad.
It's weak.
Nowadays, it's like, you can't really fist fight anymore. You got to pull out a gun. Like, really?
It's why I never bother to engage with people, road rage and stuff. You never who you're dealing with. Not to say that even fist fighting's okay, but really at that point, I think my client was trying to defend himself and this gentleman pulled out a gun and shot him multiple times, ended up spitting on him and kicking him in the face after he's bleeding out on the floor.
Where did he get shot?
He took a couple rounds to the abdomen and through the arm.
Fuck, dude, it only takes one shot to hit a really important part of your body part, and that's it.
Yep.
That's insane. So now I understand the gunshot wounds. Let's talk about denials. Denials?
Yeah.
You fucking gotta be kidding me. I understand workers' comp is a really screwed up system and they try to find reasons to deny you for X, Y, and Z, which in this case, his gunshot wounds. What?
They denied the case.
No freaking way.
Yeah.
What was the excuse?
Well,
it happened at night and you just so happened to come lay in a lawn and bleed out for 5 hours and say it happened at work.
it's your fault that you got shot, so you should get benefits. No. So everything was recorded on video. Okay.
What?
So
there was someone watching, or was this a camera on
there's
a
security
house?
cameras.
Okay,
yeah.
good.
There's security cameras in-house, and everything was caught on video from multiple angles. You can literally see the gunshot flashes on camera. It's impressive video quality of what took place. And California has a very specific rule, and the specific rule is that if you are an initial aggressor in an altercation, that you are barred for collecting workers' comp benefits, meaning that if you're the one who starts a fight, you shouldn't be the beneficiary of recovering injuries.
Yeah.
You started it. Just like if you are injured while committing a crime at work or you're voluntarily intoxicated, the legislature decided hey, we shouldn't place these rules that make it so it's more fair to employers' insurance company. If someone does really something stupid and now, why should the insurance company pay for it? So if you start a fight, you can't get benefits. And so
make sure you're the second one to throw the punch.
Yeah, don't throw the first punch. Be smart about it. Egg them on to fight. Get them to throw the first punch if you want to kick their ass. Then kick their ass, right?
Yes.
No, don't do that. But on a serious note, what they had said is my client actually did throw the first punch, and in the video and stuff, he did. He threw the first. He threw the first punch. Now it was a unique situation because he threw the first punch, but admittedly in self-defense, because this other gentleman had accosted him at work, had squared up with him, was threatening him, and had actually put his lunch bag down. And so my client thought, hey, this guy's about to kick my ass.
Yeah.
I'm going to take the initiative and I'm going to protect myself. And he's squaring up to fight with me. So I'm going to
Protect myself.
yeah, I'm going to take this and use the advantage and try and fight him off right now. Not let him hit me first and then just take, an ass whooping. I'm going to try and deal with this up front. And so, yeah, he did hit the guy first, but in self-defense.
Right.
And so it's a very complicated topic because there's a whole host of case law out there where there's a variety of situations. It's very unclear as to what makes you an initial physical aggressor. And I think our case through trial and appeal had set a very clear standard, which I think is a unique situation that hadn't been addressed before in workers' comp, is how far can you go to physically protect yourself in the presence of verbal threats?
Right. I mean, that's a fine line pretty much that you're
Yeah.
going to cross. And a lot of people probably won't understand it or might not agree with what that fine line looks like.
Yeah. And so this gentleman had actually gone to a work comp firm before us, and he was told that he had no case because they reviewed the surveillance footage and saw that he had thrown the first punch and said, no, you're out of luck.
Damn.
And we said, no, I didn't think that was right. I knew enough about the law and specifically initial aggressor statutes and such that I thought he had a really good chance.
Well, it's awesome, one, that he found a law firm that actually believed in him. I feel like there is a lot of law firms that will just side with whatever the case is. Like, yeah, unfortunately, it's your loss. And that's that.
Yeah, a lot of firms, they just want low-hanging fruit, like easy, like,
Easy
hey, let's
cases.
just, like, we want straightforward liability, like, we don't have to fight over all this junk, and, like, man, we fought a lot.
I mean, 8 years?
It's still going on, but, like, this is a tragic injury. This isn't just like, hey, he took gunshot wounds and it went through flesh and, it didn't hit vital organs. He lost a kidney. He was actually, sadly, he was in a coma for 3 months after the gunshot wounds, and he missed the birth of his daughter during that time. And his wife thought he was gone. She was pregnant at the time. It was the most tragic event at the most tragic time possible. And
Dude,
so,
I just got goosebumps. Mind you, I have not heard this story. Obviously, when we think about podcast episodes, it is a podcast. Podcasts are meant to be organic and just throw as much information as you want. So this is like my reaction.
yeah,
Just imagine what it
it's
was
really
going on.
sad. Shout out to the medical team at UC Davis. You guys kept him alive, and
That's
he's
awesome.
he's okay. Yeah. I mean, relative to what he had going on, he's not okay, but he's healing, and I think he'll be with us for a good amount of
long
time.
time.
Yeah. So this tragic injury occurred, and he got a denial, and so we had to battle it out with the insurance company to fight them and try and, I personally scoured neighborhoods looking for witnesses. And,
Wow.
I took one of my office team up there, and we were interviewing neighbors trying to track down his old coworker who had quit the company and stuff. And we went through hell trying to find anything and everything we could to fight for this guy.
Right.
And it turns out, that's right, we kicked the insurance ass. Got it. We got a favorable ruling at trial. They tried to appeal it, and they lost on appeal too.
What'd the judge say?
The judge agreed with us that he was acting in self-defense and that he was not the initial aggressor.
Nice.
Yep.
And it's not every day that a judge would particularly agree.
No, I mean,
But your evidence showed enough and proof.
yeah, and it was consistent with case law.
Nice.
And I think we had a righteous case too. It wasn't particularly a bad situation. My guy wasn't like a terrible human being where maybe
Yeah, he had like previous murder charges or whatever, a wreck of
Yeah.
history.
I mean, look, he has his skeletons too. We all do. He had a history of I think allegedly rolling with some Northern California gangs. He had some drug use stuff in school when he was younger. Like, he had his own issues. I have my issues. Everyone does, right?
Yeah.
But that doesn't take away from the fact that the insurance company left him to die, just like the guy who shot him did.
Dude, that sucks. Imagine
Yeah.
had this case not moved forward, had it ended where it ended. On top of the fact that the baby mama was dealing with him being in a coma, her just having a child, and then the medical bills on top of it, God forbid, funeral bills.
Yep.
Shit, man. Like,
UC Davis, at one point, they had a lien on his case. to try and recover the money that they'd spent and,
Of course.
and caring for him and still caring for him and
What
such.
was that bill like?
Oh, it was, I think the last I had seen it, it was $7 million or something like that. It was an outrageous amount of money. I mean, he's in and out of surgeries. He's in ICU forever, coma, the amount of work they had to do to fight to keep him alive and stuff. And he was a wreck. You know, you could see the pictures of him, and he's pretty tore up.
This is insane, and I'm glad you're sharing this type of story because this could definitely benefit the amount of things that could happen potentially in a workers' comp case. Now, mind you, this was a case where someone was shot. It wasn't a cut. It wasn't a back pain. It wasn't something less significant. It was dramatic. And this happens all the time with minor cuts that then turn into infections, or with shoulder dislocations, or with back injuries. It happens all the time.
Yep, all the time, all the time. And this case is especially unique just because of how long it's been going on.
8 years.
8 years. This all occurred in 2014.
This is insane.
I've been working on the case the entire time. So for me, it's kind of crazy because, you know, there's some people who come and go in my life, you know, friends, exes, whatever.
Dogs, pets.
Dogs, pets, you know,
name it.
whatever. And like, here I am with this gentleman, and, you know, we've known each other and worked together now for 8 years.
That's insane.
You know, it's a long time to know someone and know someone going through such a really shitty experience. It's pretty wild. You know,
It is.
It's I don't know how to describe it. It's just an interesting feeling to know someone that long that's a client. Like, it's crazy.
That's insane. And
know?
it's unfortunate because most of these clients' cases are, 2 years?
Yeah,
Sometimes a
you know,
year?
sometimes
Like,
6 months, 12 months, 2 years, 3 years maybe. You know, some clients are like, oh man, I just settled a gentleman's case who had been my client for 5 years. And I think we got a really solid, pretty big 6-figure result for him. And I thought to myself, like, wow, that took a long time. You know, we really had to push for this.
Yeah.
And I felt bad, but that's just the system. And for this client in particular, I feel extra bad because despite the fact that the insurance carrier is now lost on trial and appeal, they've had to pay him benefits. We have multiple doctors now who say he's incapable of working and he should be 100% disabled, and they're still fighting me.
damn. The fact that they've already lost in so many aspects, they're still trying to fight you for other things.
I feel like they
that's
would
insane.
rather pay attorney's fees. They'd rather pay doctor's fees. They'd rather pay anything and anyone but my client.
That's so sad.
Yeah, and I'm convinced they just have this negative perception as my client. They probably look at my client as like, oh, you know, he
took advantage
was
of the
this
system.
gardener and he was a gangbanger or whatever, and he started a fight and now we have to pay this guy. Like, I feel like that's the attitude coming from the insurance company, not like, hey, this is a human and he has a family and he had terrible fucking things happen to him, and maybe we should compensate him.
It sucks, man.
Yeah, and so every step of the way, it's just fight this, fight that, pay this, pay that, like anyone but my client. And my client sitting here this whole entire time just like suffering, going through this system. It's heartless.
It is, and it's unfortunate, but fortunate that we're talking about this because it opens up the eyes to many people that are constantly going through stuff like this. Again, maybe not to this extent, but at the end of the day, they're still going through some stuff. And the insurance company, for some reason, it's money. It's all money, dude. It's how much money can they save?
It absolutely is. And I think the important point too is just because your case is accepted, meaning the insurance company has either voluntarily picked it up or they've been forced to by court.
They've been forced to, right?
And they don't have a choice anymore. That doesn't mean that it's all good. It doesn't mean your battle's over. It doesn't mean like, hey, it's easy now. You still have to fight. It's just constantly throughout the whole entire case. In this case, 8 years.
Man,
8 long years. And like, you know, I talked to some other friends who are lawyers in different industries and stuff. And in California, in civil court, superior court, which is where you typically see most jury trials and things like that
Right.
for a variety of things, they have a system in place called fast track. And the idea is that most cases, I think the goal number is 75% of cases are adjudicated in the court within 18 months of filing.
That's nice.
Yeah, and it's like, well, that's great. Like, I filed this like in 2014, and here I am. Like,
sucks,
you know,
dude.
workers' comp doesn't have these systems in place to force things to be expedited, and usually that's just because the system is set up in a way that it takes forever too. which is beyond the lawyer's control, obviously.
Of course, obviously, it's the law, it's the system in general that we've always talked about, and we've always mentioned, particularly all of the slowbacks and all just everything that goes into the denials and the appeals and the time frames and how long the insurance company has to answer and how they want to push people's buttons and get them tired so they can just quit halfway through their case, and it's unfortunate. It's a system. I'm really glad you shared that story. I don't think there's been a podcast ever in history that shares that deep of a story. So if anyone's going through a workers' comp case and you need a badass attorney, I mean, hello, 8 years into a case with a case like this, say no more. I'm just gonna say that.
Yeah, and I unfortunately say it's kind of par for the course. I'm not a golfer, but I use that reference a lot, and that means it's just this client's experience is not unique. It's uniquely bad because of the significance of his injury and his medical needs and such, and how catastrophic it was for him and his family. But everyone's going through this. Everyone's fighting delays, denials, waiting around, having to battle it out day in, day out for everything in workers' comp. It's never easy. Whether you have a cut finger, you have a broken back, you have an amputation, everything's a fight.
Yeah.
And I don't think anyone gets an easy way out. But for those that are having this as their first experience, I think it's good for everyone to know, like, you're not alone in this, and your situation, unfortunately, is incredibly common for the industry.
I think you couldn't have said it a better way. That's exactly what it is. It's just eye-opener, and hopefully you've listened to the podcast and you get an idea of what the situations might be. And you've always said this term, you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
How would you even know that, you go in, you get your case denied, and you're like, well, they said no, sorry, there's nothing I can do about it. And that's that.
Yeah. Well, and people think, why me? Why am I being treated so poorly in this system? Like, why is it that I'm not getting the care I need? Why isn't it that my benefits aren't being paid on time? And yeah, it's unfortunately very common. And when you're asking that, I know at my firm, we have thousands of clients. There's a lot of those clients who are asking those same questions.
Yeah.
And the answer is the same, though. I can tell you that. It's the system, it's the insurance adjuster, it's the defense attorney, it's this, it's that. It's a combination of the system and the people in it that make life very difficult.
Yeah, it's just the system. I mean, again, it's just this, and it doesn't happen for everyone. There's those cases that do run smoothly.
Yeah, there's some, some are great. Some, and I've talked about this before, some insurance adjusters, they'll pay benefits, they'll pick up liability for the case, they're reasonable, they're easy to work with, and kudos to them, Yeah. Same thing with defense attorneys. There's defense attorneys out there, and I've worked with them. They actually, I don't want to say advocate for my client against their own, but they recognize what's happening in the case, and they use their power and authority to work with their client to be more efficient and get things done.
That's
and
nice.
I can really appreciate that and resonate with it, and I know it's helped out many of my clients too. And they can still advocate for their clients and ensure that their clients aren't paying more than they have to, that they're doing everything that they need to do legally and not do more than that.
That's good to know.
But there's a balance, and there's those times in workers' comp where you're like, great, this system's working as it should.
That's good to know. I mean, it has its phases, it has its ups and downs, but just know that if this is something that's happening to you or someone that's going through it, get a consultation. The free consultations that workers' comp attorneys give can answer so many of those questions you have pondering, keeping you up at night. I think, what do you have to lose besides the time you're going to spend with the attorney and get those questions answered? There's more to benefit and more to gain than to lose when you do a free consultation. And if someone's trying to charge you for the consultation, run. Seriously.
They shouldn't be paying for consultations.
That's just another part of the system that is unfortunate. There are workers' comp attorneys, like you said, they're just looking for the low-hanging fruit and trying to make a quick buck. They're like, screw it, let's just get this in, get this out. Doesn't really matter. We just want the money. That's why it's very important to do.
Yeah, I think, what's the term? Like, swing big, win big, right? There's a lot of people who just like the easy plays and stuff, but I think it takes a lot of strength to be bold and try difficult cases. And there's some people out there that are great at it. There's others that won't do it. doesn't hurt to talk to
Yeah.
a few different lawyers, talk to a few different people, get their opinions. And if someone says no to you, don't feel discouraged, move on to the next and see what other people think, because you never know. You may find a lawyer like myself, not to toot my own horn or anything,
Like Bilal Kassem.
who's willing to take a flyer and gamble on something. And I've done quite a few cases where that's been the case, especially death cases and otherwise.
That's awesome. Good for you. Good for you. Well, with that being said, thank you guys for joining us. We are super happy to have you here. Make sure you subscribe to our podcast, share it, and we'll catch you guys on the next episode of Work Comp Talk.